we start this, that was very sweet of you. Thank you. That's very nice. And before we start, when I did this 2 weeks ago in Los Angeles, there was kind of a, I don't know, there was, no one had any questions to ask. And, but then we realized that people had to have time to kind of reflect. Now, we're going to go ahead and have questions if some of you maybe are faster than they are in California. In any case, if you're not, what we're suggesting, we had some response by letters from some of the people out there, and I read them the other night for the first time. They were given to me here, and I found it very interesting. So the thought occurred to me that possibly some of you who may not have questions this minute that would like to reflect on it, please write me a letter on it. And tell me how marvelous that was. I'd love to hear that. But, you know, I suppose a simple suggestion to make is you might tell me what you thought was your favorite thing and what was your least favorite thing. That gives me some clues to your critical mind. Just something that you were sort of indifferent to, or something along that. You write whatever you like, but that's just a suggestion. But I would like to hear some response by letter. And what you can do is to write me in care of the Newark Festival address, which you will find, I think, at the registration desk. And I think it was in another room too. But you may have seen the Newark Festival post box address. It'll be out there on the table if you feel inclined to write later on. But meanwhile, let's have some response to the proceedings. Yes?
You were talking earlier where I came in.
Excuse me while I take off my costume.
You were talking about Adam and Eve, and I thought it was interesting. Something I wanted to hear reflect on was Eve had been, she did what she did, and Adam for a long time questioned Adam, and Adam goes, the woman that you dated. Yeah, and the first half of the book right there.
Yes, I had mentioned that in an earlier version of this, that they're all passing the buck. As a matter of fact, yes, of course, Eve tattles on the snake, and then they're all into it together. So there's really no, I wanted to make sure that I was not slandering womankind in the long run. I mean, it was a kind of little conceit there, a little literary conceit. I found that thing in the dictionary so funny. I thought you'd be amused by that, so I kind of worked it into the flow of it. It really was a diversion in the flow of the whole program, but I thought it would be kind of... Beg pardon?
I would think they wouldn't do that. I was thinking how old was it?
Oh, it's the latest version. Oh, yeah. Of course, I wanted to stop in the middle of, or make a little comment in the middle of the read, but that would have been blasphemous. But I think the real punishment was in man will be your master. And I thought, well, that's a real punishment by today's standards. Anybody with a yes?
The album which I saw and also used to have Dark Shadows. Where was it recorded?
Where was it recorded? In New York.
I'd like to say it was very well done.
Thank you. That was, I remember that day. I felt I could have done a little bit better. I don't know, but one always does think they feel they could do better. I thought it was a little too lugubrious, but then that's my style, which sometimes I like, sometimes I don't. I was a little bit, I thought I overdid it a little bit, but they encouraged me to do it that way. So I'll pass the buck myself.
I think what you said near the end, that little bit where it said, our little life is around this week, that was very appropriate.
Yes, that little bit I liked. I liked that. That was my favorite part of it, I think.
One more
Prospero, I think, or is it Prospero? It's the end of the Tempest. It's near the end of the Tempest.
What was your favorite particular episode, you personally, for Dark Shadows?
Well, I'll tell you that next time I see you all, because I'm going to, sometime in the near future, when I get back to New York, is to sit down and listen. I've got to get myself a rent of one of these VCRs and watch these tapes, because I really just for me to say would be just, there were 2 or 3 episodes that I saw recently in New York, from pick up from Newark, and there was 1 or 2 that I mentioned recently that I thought went very well in the past, I think. But one that I sort of liked, I thought it went awfully well way back when, was the allusion to a duel with what's his name? Bert Devlin. That scene, I thought went well. I remember breathing a sigh of relief when I was watching it a few months back, thinking, oh, I hope I didn't blow that one. Because it was so neat and tidy, and I just know I'm the first one to blow something like that. See? Just a little phrase will throw me, you see, but it went very well, so I was kind of happy with it. That was one of my favorites. But there was one I did, I think, with Josette when I could bring back her veil. That scene kind of, sort of like that. Yes. Yes, sir.
Why were there 3 people that played Victoria Interest?
Because they all left for one reason or another. Although there was one time I thought they should have written her right out. It was ridiculous to bring her back because the girl was so wrong. And I don't think she stayed very long, as I recall. She was just on briefly, and that was it. So why they even bothered to bring her back on, I don't know. I mean, her value to the story was really quite incidental at that point, as I recall. Again, I'll have a bigger opinion on that when I get to see all these tapes again. Yes.
We've got Dallas, and we've got Dynasty. Why couldn't we bring back our
Keep yelling. People are the ones that do it. Yeah, sure. Just keep after these little guys. You know, right? I mean, they're not the big networks. Right, the stations right here. They're the grassroots. I mean, they'll never get to anybody to send them to the network. Write your station managers. Yes. Well, you whatever.
After I realized that usually the evil characters are entirely more dimensional than the regular hero or Irishman. Don't you ever get the desire to play Will Goldie or a stage manager in Irishman or something basic on that line of football?
Oh, sure. As a matter of fact, I played Editor Webb at our town once. And that was fun. And even at that point in my life, I was very young then. You know, I started off my career at 16 playing the heavies. And I grew younger as the years progressed. But Editor Webb was the second thing I ever played. I mean, it was in school, but I mean, when I say my acting, I mean my first acting in the amateur world. And yes, I don't know. I love to play comedy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think that playing the kinds of roles I've done, I mean, have far greater range than the pretty boys ever get to play.
Well, I know that due to my height and my general stature, I'll never play those because somebody's not built for it. Most of these men are 5'4". And all the villains are 6 foot.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering if you ever regretted.
Oh no. I've had a pretty good variety. You know, I've played some fun roles. You know, I played Starbuck in the Rainmaker, believe it or not, one summer, and I can think of a lot of roles, enough to give me that feeling of.
That flavor.
Oh yeah, the flavor of it, sure. I'd like to do some more comedy, to tell you the honest truth. I mean, I love to hear people laugh, you know, and so maybe I will more. But nevertheless, the villains, you know, they really have all the gutsy stuff to do. Yes.
In view of what you were just performing for us, when they presented you with the character of Barnabas, had you had any previous conceptions of what an evil character would be? Were you flavored at all by the Dracula, the typical sinister, or did this kind of development come mostly from you, or what you were provided as you mentioned yesterday?
Well, as I think I was saying yesterday, I only read recently this article that what's his name did with Ron Sproat and Richard Levantino. And it was my first real full knowledge that really he was he was there the day I was, before my first rehearsal, and I hadn't realized that he had discussed me that much with the writers and the producers. But he'd been to Yale with me, you see, and he'd remembered my roles up there. He remembered me very well as an actor. And apparently he spoke for a vampire with more dimension. That's why they hired me, because he knew I would bring that to it, I guess.
Did you see it that way yourself as you talked about it? Or
Well, yes, any role I've ever done. You know, even when I played Richard, I tried my darndest to justify everything he did, and that was it was impossible. And Shakespeare leaves nothing. He is evil, period. And you're wasting your time trying to make, but I did. You know, I tried to justify. He was a York, belonged to the York family, and and you admire his spunk, if nothing else. And so I look for values in a villain. I mean, it's a bore just to play villainy. And I think some of the villains in Dark Shadows, for example, I won't mention names, but there are many villains throughout the series, and they were predictable. You knew what they were going to do the next day. But I would be damned if I'm going to let anybody know what I'm going to do the next day, and I'll do anything to throw in a surprise into a performance. So if I play a goody-goody, I'll try to find something that's dirty about him.
As you went back now and prepared this presentation, did you see, as you were picking your pieces, do you have any idea of what you were conceiving back then? Was that different from what you're seeing now looking back on it?
Oh no, when I was groping, as Anne will tell you, about 2 months ago, I was just looking at, I was reading everything. I really didn't know where I was going. I don't know where I got this. Well, except that I think the development, even the development of the vampire to more of a human person, I think came rather late. I don't know. I can't remember now. All I remember is 2 months ago, just reading everything, and it was boring because I had no focus. And I thought, I better get focus here right away, and we're getting close to the line. So finally, I just decided a whim. And as a matter of fact, that thing from the dictionary sent me on a whole thing. And then I thought, well, I better get back on track, whatever the track is. So one thing led to another. It was not planned. It just, you sit and you play solitaire. I play solitaire when I can't think of what I want to do, so I think when I play solitaire. Well, we've heard from you. Anybody else? We'll come back to you. Yes?
Well, how did you go about choosing the scene between Barnabas and Julia?
Beg pardon?
How did you go about choosing that scene between Barnabas and Julia?
Well, at that point, I'll tell you what, I was going back and forth. Now, I wanted to show how these roles that I played in the past, in some, either consciously or subconsciously, affected my shaping of Barnabas. So I thought, well, I knew Richard did, and I knew Macbeth did in some kind of way. And I thought, well, now, which scene would be best? Of all things I did in Dark Shadows, which scene would be nearest to anything I did as Richard? There could have been other possibilities, but I just happened to think of that because we'd just seen it in New Jersey 2 or 3 weeks before. And I thought that scene went rather, that was one of my favorite scenes too. Whoever was asking me my favorite scenes. That scene, I liked that scene. And I thought, well, I might as well use a bit of it. Actually, I was using more of it 2 weeks ago, but I thought I better not get, even though this is a non-paid affair here, still, I didn't want to get playing too much of Barnabas. It may get back to the wrong people that I'm commercializing all this, which I'm not at all. So I thought I'd better keep it low-key. So I didn't use as much as I was using of that scene. But by the way, I was going to read just some stuff here, but I won't do it for this today because it's too academic and lengthy. But of all the things, I talk in the title, the precepts remembered from literature that influenced my shaping of Barnabas. And the one thing that had a very direct shaping I'd forgotten totally about till I happened to be up in Canada recently. I saw an old school book. I mentioned this yesterday, William Thacker. His description, his comparison of Richard and I'm going to read about 2 sentences. But this is a description of Barnabas, and you correct me if I'm wrong. But this is written 2 centuries ago, and it, to me, describes Barnabas completely. He's comparing Richard with Macbeth, and Barnabas is the combination of the two, I think. And I think this is where probably, I've forgotten, you say what was influence, but something, because I remember reading this when I did Macbeth about 20 years ago in New Jersey. And I did Macbeth, and I remember reading this in preparation for Macbeth. I've tried to get some, read just one sentence here. Well, Macbeth endeavors to escape from reflection on his crimes by repelling their consequences and banishes remorse for the past by the meditation of future mischief. This is not the principle of Richard's cruelty, which resembles the wanton malice of a fiend as much as the frailty of human passion. Macbeth is goaded on to acts of violence and retaliation by necessity. To Richard, blood is a pastime. There are other decisive differences inherent in the two characters. Richard may be regarded as a man of the world, a plotting, hardened knave, who, wholly regardless of everything but his own ends and the means to secure them. Not so Macbeth. The superstitions of the age, the rude state of society, the local scenery and customs, all give a wildness and imaginary grandeur to his character. From the strangeness of the events that surround him, he is full of amazement and fear and stands in doubt between the world of reality and the world of fancy. He sees sights not shown to mortal eyes and hears unearthly music. But anyway, it describes Macbeth as someone more tormented. He's a tormented soul, whereas Richard just gallops right through the whole show. Of course, mind you, if any of you saw me do Richard in New York last year, that was the one place in Richard where he really does have he suffers terrible pains of hell in the end when he has the nightmare after he's just before the night of his final battle, and he sees all the ghosts of all the people he's ever murdered coming for him, and he has this nightmare which he can't wake up from. And I remember when I did Richard, that was the one, my favorite soliloquy in the whole show, but I was so late in the show and I was so tired that it was awfully hard to do it. But if any of you are prone to having nightmares and can't wake up from them, and I've often had that experience, you just can't wake up. And the whole thing seems to, even when you're awake, it takes you 5 minutes to get rid of all of the cobwebs of it, the horror of it. And this is what Richard has at the end. He cannot shake. Macbeth is pain from the very beginning, and Richard gets it all one thing at the end. But the combination of the two people really had more influence on Barnabas than any other roles I've ever played. Tell me when it's time to kind of wrap things up. Yes?
I was going to ask you.
Thank you for sitting back here and watching my back go.
I don't care. Believe me, I'm going to be in heaven for the next week. What I was wondering, there were different dimensions of Barnabas throughout the entire series, not only in frustrated as being a young man as opposed to tormented as being, later on and having things come back to him. Which of those particular Barnabases were you most satisfied with in doing at the time?
Well, again, I'd have to see, so much of it, as I think I said yesterday to somebody, that just passing that door and seeing scenes up here, I don't even remember. I mean, it's as if somebody else was doing it. I mean, it's just whole plots I have no recollection of. You remember the early ones, naturally, as one always does. But there were too many stuff. I think watching myself, at certain times I was more comfortable than earlier. I certainly didn't like the first period because I was simply too nervous. I mean, I was very uptight all the time. Although it worked, because so was Barnabas, you see. This is the great thing about Barnabas, by the way, that I could play all my fears of being on television right into the part, because he was, if I had a problem, think of Barnabas' problem. Trying to adjust to, imagine yourself coming back in the year 2,500 or something. I mean, and having to lie and tell everybody that you were over in England, that England was still be, for all he knows, England's not even there anymore. I mean, he really has nothing to go on. So the horror, I mean, if the suspension of disbelief and you believe in all these things, if you accept the premise, Barnabas has a horrible thing, which So I was able to play. I played all my fears into Barnabas right off the bat. And sometimes when I was thinking I was going to get fired any minute, you see it right on the screen, and that's when I'm at my most horrible. Because the eyes, there's nothing more horrible than a monster that's frightened. It's like an animal that's terrified, and he's coming at you. That's because there's no control over somebody that's in that state. So it worked, but I wasn't very comfortable doing that, or even though it was effective. Yes. Oh, someday, very soon, I hope. Whatever I'm asked back, I guess, or whatever. Sure. Yes.
I was curious to know, outside of the Dark Shadows troupe, is there any actor or are there any actors that you would especially admire?
Maybe outside of
the Dark Shadows troupe.
I used to have people I admire. I really haven't been too well caron lately on who's. I still hark back to Laurence Olivier. He was always my favorite. Simply because he was a surprising actor. You never knew what he was going to do next. I think he was my model as an actor because I used to see him at the Old Vic in London years and years ago, and even in some of the movies he's done in the last 10 or 15 years, where people say, the poor man, here he's Lord Olivier, the great actor of our century, and here he is just taking any old crazy role just to paying his debts. Is what he's doing. He's so in debt, the poor man, with all these projects that he did in England. So he has to take anything. But wherever he touches, though, there's always something interesting about him. He just doesn't do it to make the money. He really tries to disguise himself. See, very few American and Canadian actors, they just play themselves, and they're so predictable. But Olivier and some of the English actors, they play like we used to do in stock or in rep. You had a new character every week, and you put on all kinds of gobs of hair and wigs and mustaches, and you did this one week, and you did this the next week, and you did all these cliches. But that's your training in England, and with all those rep theaters, and all those great English actors had that training. And of course, the best of them didn't just do this one week and that the next, but they did all kinds of nuances. But they had this experience of bringing a new, fresh angle on themselves each week, and that was, to me, always the fun of acting, was to disguise myself, try to guess who I am. But everybody I see on television today, and even in the movies, they're all pretty predictable. I shouldn't be saying all this because I really don't watch television enough to be a critique of it. I may be fully surprised if I start to watch some of these things. Matter of fact, I see the odd movie and I'm really quite stunned by some of the acting I see. But I have no favorite actor. I don't see any one actor enough to say he's my favorite. I've seen some marvelous acting. Something I saw not too long ago. I was thoroughly entranced with it, and thought that it was even when I was going to California 2 weeks ago on the plane, I saw Splash, and I thought they were damn good at Splash. But I never saw them before. Whoever they were pretty good actors. But so I have no favorites anymore, except I go back to Olivier. Of all the actresses, I suppose Betty Davis was my favorite way back when. She was she had her stamp on everything. There was no question about who was acting, but she would have a nuance with each character she did. And she used to fascinate me because she was... Yes, sir?
I know that you probably had some there mentioned so far I've heard here.
Okay.
How old are you?
60 almost. Gotta be 60 in December. So I'm getting on there. I better revive my career fast. And this is getting awfully. I hate looking at myself with that slender cutaway coat I'm wearing. Oh, gosh. Yes, sir.
What was your favorite actor to work with? Or which one did you work with?
Well, I was most comfortable, I guess, with John Carlin. Not because I was bossing him around. He was bossing me around. He was nice to work with. And Kate Jackson. Kate Jackson was just all to work with. I mean, she was just a kid then, she was just... But you felt confident with her. She came to rehearsals No, she knew her lines. She knew her marks. She remembered her business, and she was always on time. And she was on time for every scene, and never gave any flack. If you went up, she'd help or wait. I liked her very much. But John was a great friend of mine, and Louis Edmonds. He's been my closest friend, I guess. Although I don't think, I really shouldn't say all this in front of people, but he's a different kind of actor, we'll put it that way, from what I am. Let's get on with it. I mean, I don't want to hear your problem about Barnabas. I mean, let's get it done and get out of here at 5 o'clock. Enough of your nonsense, you know. And I just get sort of kill him. So sort of a love-hate relationship there. I mean, I like him. We have a great times together, and we giggle a lot. But yes.
I really wanted to know if that's your real hair and what kind of girls you like.
You're pretty hot stuff yourself. Okay. But speak up. I can't hear you too well. You've got a dainty little voice. Well, sing out, Louise. But, yes.
My middle name is Louise.
All right, sing out.
Looking back on the Dracula justifying himself, have you ever read a novel by Fred called The Dracula Files? He takes the Bram Stoker story and tells the entire tale from Dracula's point of view, justifying everything. Every movie that he makes throughout the entire book, Dracula justifies it. You should find it right there. Well, he also wrote a second one called The Holmes Dracula Files. Every other chapter of that is written out by Dr. Watson or by Dracula himself. And the basic idea behind that is that Holmes and Dracula is out to be second uncle or mentor that it is.
Yeah.
And he has a strong family resemblance.
Yeah. I saw Bela Lugosi's Dracula. Of course, I grew up on that. I mean, when I was a kid, that saw it when it first came out. But I saw it not too long ago, a year or so ago, and I was fascinated with it simply because it was like a ballet. I mean, coming down that marble staircase with all those webs, and it was just like going to the City Center Ballet in New York. It was just beautiful looking. But there was absolutely no character there at all, which was kind of its point, and I thought was the lovely thing about it, if you may use the word lovely. It was just he was like a dancer. Everything was, and of course, everybody wanted to set me up for Dracula in that damn Broadway production, and it annoyed me because first of all, I'm not that kind of an actor. I mean, I'm not tippy-toe. That's what they did. It was a send-up, and it was all done as a sort of a takeoff on Lugosi. I just not that kind of an actor. I mean, I would have liked to have tried it, but I resented the fact just because I play a vampire in Dark Shadows doesn't mean I can play that kind of a vampire, because this is different as day and night, so to speak. Forget the analogy.
Totally don't want to hear. One of my first memories that I recall is when I was 4 years old, rushing like mad in elementary school, to sit next to my elementary school best friend, and get scared out of my wits by Barnabas College.
Sorry about that, because all my anguish didn't get to you. You were just plain scared. Yes, you were going to ask something.
Well, I just wanted to say that I always felt like Barnabas got the rotten end of the stick, you know what I mean? Because Angelique kept turning up like a bad penny and and she'd come along and screw up his life and everything just when things started going good for him. And even when he was being really mean and nasty to Julia, I still liked him.
See, that was the great fun of Barnabas. He scared somebody, and then you were sympathetic to somebody else.
Well, I laugh at JR when he's doing it.
Yes, there was somebody way back in the corner there, but I guess she's talking to her. Anybody else with a question? Yes.
Where are you originally from?
I'm a Canadian from a place called Hamilton, Ontario. Why are you Canadian? Right, where are you from?
Toronto.
Oh, well, that big place. You call us Steel Town, right? Hmm?
Stratford, you were born in Stratford?
No, I played Stratford, Connecticut, but not in Ontario. Not in my own backyard, no. Yes? Which house? You mean, first of all, you're talking about this, not the movie, but the series. You're talking about the new house, or the old house, or the main house, or the main house. Well, that's up in Rhode Island, and what's the town? Newport, Rhode Island. And I have to tell this funny story because I'd been up there 2 or 3 times with friends who entered car shows, old car things, and that. So I thought, well, the third time I was up there with some other people, I thought, well, I've got to go find that house. So we kind of had a little tour one day of. It's near all these houses that are all on display, the Vanderbilt house and all these grand mansions. And anyway, we approached it from the back, and I had to go down this side road. And I got out of the car, and I said, I think it's through those bushes in there. I'm not sure, but I think it is. So I went through these bushes, just like Barnabas prowling around. and I literally went through and got through, and there I was, and there were some people walking right on the lawn, just that same shot that you always see of the main house. You know, you see the tower, it's kind of in an angle. They show it every time they show they show a picture of it. And there, that was exactly the view I had, and some people walked by, and I thought, Lord, if they'd ever seen Dark Shadows. And I felt so down, but then there was a dog, somebody's dog started to bark at me, and I thought, get me out of here, you know. But that's how I saw the house. I was, doing this. Yes, sir.
Were you in Dallas for the premiere of House of Dark Shadows? I've heard a rumor that you were in town that very day, and some friend of mine had told me that you were going down the aisle and someone had stuck out his foot or something. I said, it sounds to me like an outrageous rumor, so I just had to get the...
Yeah, no, I never was here for that, so I'm glad I wasn't tripped.
To get you off sort of a different subject, I'm an artist, and I was wondering if you could tell us a little something about the portraits they had in the shows. Who did them, and did you know what happened to them?
To tell you all the truth, I really don't know who did them. I don't know who did them now that I think of it. Because they did the one of me in the old house. That's the one the one over the fireplace. That they took pictures of me, and whoever the artist was did it from the pictures. I remember the day they took those pictures, and they spent a half an hour of my time, and I was telling some people the other day that was probably one of the worst experiences I ever had in my life, because it was the first week I was on the show, or the first month I was on the show, and they were getting that thing ready, and every second counted for me to get on to stay with the script, and to think that I had to, right just before we were shooting one day, or taping, I had to sit there for half an hour and waste that time, and I was just in agony. It was an awful time for me, but just to lose that half hour, just to sit for some dumb thing which I didn't even know what it was for. But the other picture, the other portrait, had to be done before I was even on the show, before they found the actor to do it. So Bob Costello, I'd love to tell the story. Bob Costello, who's the associate producer, for some reason or other, sat in for that picture. And so they did it's his body and his head, but there was just a face for the actor. So the guy is sort of bald. And so he pulled what hair he did across his face and forehead, hence the bangs. That's why Barnabas had the bangs. Costello was pulling with the hair he had, and it came out like bangs. So we had to, and that was in the head of the portrait, you see. So when the face went in, it went in as if to say underneath the bangs. So I had to do the bangs on it. And I was just saying at lunch today how half the time I never even got those bangs right. Now I was watching this afternoon. Half those things today, my hair was just like this, I mean, every day, some days. Sometimes I was so late, I'd be running downstairs doing this. Yes, sir.
Last Friday, they took off Dark Shadows just as they were advertising the convention. Don't you think that's sort of like a backstab to all the fans of Dark Shadows?
Well, yes, I think it's very sad for you people, obviously. I thought that actually it might, and I think it's borne out. I mean, you had a very nice crowd here, and I sort of thought, well, it'll bring people out, like having a wake. And whereas some people might have been indifferent to coming because, well, they've got the show to see, but now they have to see it anymore. It may have brought people out. I don't know of any who had that feeling. You're here so to celebrate a wake, so to speak, and it's your last chance. But I don't know. I think what I've heard, if you people fight for it when you're away, I think there's another station, right, that's thinking about doing it, or smaller. Didn't I hear that? It's depending on the because there's been a management change, and I think if you keep after this new management, you people really ought to hustle and stir up some trouble here. Yeah, I mean, go down and parade downtown. Placards.
Well, they have to bring it back. I mean,
Wait for the Republican convention. Work it in somehow. I don't know. Something like I guess Barnabas give it that. Yes.
Whatever happened to movie seizure? Movie seizure that you were in?
Well, Oliver Stone won't let it out. He's buried that thing, and I think he shouldn't have done it. It's not that bad. As a matter of fact, the New York Times gave it a rather nice review. I thought it was going to be dreadful. I hated doing that. It was awful. But it turned out not to be, well, I wouldn't be able to give a fair comment because I thought it was going to be so awful that I thought when I saw it, it was at least better than I thought it was going to be. But how anybody else? But as a matter of fact, I heard some nice things about it. The idea of it was marvelous, but I thought it was just badly carried out. But some of it was very good. It had some nice moments in it. But he won't release it for some reason or other. Yes?
No, I was just wondering about the other characters on the series. Do you all keep in touch, or do you have reunions? Or
well, only these reunions. Like last week, it was nice seeing David again. I hadn't seen David in 15 years. And we got together after the festival and came to a party that some people had for me in Los Angeles, and came to that, which was nice. His wife, I hadn't seen his wife in 15 years. And John, I usually always see John when we meet again in town. But I suppose if I were living there, I probably wouldn't see him anyway for 1 year. I mean, I say I don't see Louis Edmonds that much. He's in New York. I see him maybe 2 or 3 times a year. Sometimes not even that. Sometimes more. It depends. You move on. I think actors get to meet some and know intimately so many people because you're, especially in stock, or if you're in a summer stock or a rep, you're bound to each other morning, noon, and night. And so you become very close, whether you like each other or not. And then it's all goes to the winds, and you move on to the next group. And I've met hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that I've worked hard with in my lifetime. And so you don't really have, it's impossible to keep up with people. But as I was saying this morning, I'd like to keep up with Bob Costello and his wife, who did the music for the show. And Weinberger, Sybil Weinberger. I haven't seen them in years, but I like them, and I think we should be friends. And we used to see a lot of each other, and they were always good company. But I've gone, just go back to other people. You drift along. New York, that's New York. It's so big that you drift from one group to another. Yes.
Is Jonathan Frid your name, or is it an actor?
It's John Frid. But that was took up too little space in the marquee, so I stretched it to Jonathan. Besides, John Frid. It's just pop up. It's like John Herbert, yeah. My mother had a fit. She thought I was being awfully la-di-da by doing Jonathan. But anyway, I did it. And I think it works better than somebody once said, in describing me, they said, Barnabas Collins played by an actor with an appropriately Gothic name, Jonathan Frid. I never thought of it being Gothic, but it was the New York Times that said that one time. Yes?
Do you recall the scene where Barnabas, first time he got bit by the bat, he shot Angelique. She cursed him, and he shot her. And right after that, they talk or they fight or whatever they did. Right after that, the bat bit Barnabas. Do you recall that scene? It was a bat they had on strings and you...
Well, there was one. You're talking about that scene they just played?
No, that was the
Because that was silly. I remember that. When I saw it, I thought, oh, ridiculous thing. It's just what I mean, they're so literal sometimes. It used to amaze me because these directors, sometimes the scenes were beautifully done and they were beautifully conceived. Matter of fact, that dream sequence I thought was beautifully done. I was rather very impressed by all of that. I have not seen it or been part of it for all these years. Some of it's so beautifully done that suddenly they just break down and the bat can be done with so many ways. Even then they had so many technical things that they suggested it. You don't have to see this damn foolish thing. The power of suggestion. Have a shadow or something. Of course, except I don't suppose a vampire bat should have a shadow any more than the vampire bat. But anyway, could have been done so much simpler, in a simpler way, and just as effective, or more effective. It's like I used to hate the bite scenes because they would make me show off the damn as if they were wanting to get their money's worth out of it. And they say, come on, look up into the camera. The time I thought that bite was most effective was the first time I ever used the fangs, and of course that was an hysterical time. Because when I first used them, I thought, well, I'll just put them in my pocket, see. And then while my given moment to get them in, they were upside down the wrong way around. Naturally, so I had to learn later on to have them on a prop or something where the camera wouldn't pick it up. And so that when I was going in for the bite, then they go onto her face, and then I would do this, and they'd go right in. But I had to learn that with trial and error. The first time I got them out of my pocket, they put in the wrong way, and that was when I came into Maggie's room way back near the beginning, and I crossed the room and come around, and then they took a picture. I not only had to get the teeth in and be an actor, but I was also being their prop man at the same time. I had to hold the cane so the camera could do a smart-ass thing through the thing to get an interesting shot. So I had to do that work for them at the same time. Well, that went out the window because I was so busy. And actually what I ended up doing was just chewing them and just they all had to be redone. I just chewed them up, put them in the back of my mouth someplace, and I just went in sideways. Instead of doing this to the camera. I just went in like that, and I thought that was the most sinister, just for the power of suggestion. I thought that was much more effective than saying, here are my fangs. And so the same thing with the bat. They were so literal about that damn fool bat. It spoiled that scene every time. And it was when Dr. Woodard was killed too, so that they used one of them too. Yes?
No.
Tell me when to shut up, will you?
Lucasfilm, they had a fly landing before it. They had an actress. Was she trying to cover for you so you get that fly off?
Oh, yes, that's the fly. Oh. I don't know how that was resolved. Forgotten. I saw that blooper not too long ago. And yes, that was awkward. But I thought, well, even vampires get flies on them. That didn't bother me. The only thing that ever bothered me is what I did myself. If I made mistakes, but if anything else happened, I almost enjoyed those things because that's the lap of the gods, nothing to do with me. So anything that happened like that to me never bothered me. As a matter of fact, I thought, well, I'll show them. I can be nonchalant about it. But even though it takes your mind off the story for 5 minutes, but at least it wasn't my fault. I may have smelled a little. Yes, sir.
Could you describe briefly how the special effects, how they filmed that last scene in House of Dark Shadows when Jeff Clark killed you off with the arrow? All the blood and everything.
I was so exhausted that day. I don't know how they did whatever they did. And of course, there were so many versions of that too as it came out. It's been tampered with and so forth. I really don't remember very much about that day. I do remember one thing though, which I thought was funny that day. They had word got around Norwalk, I think is where that house was, And it was another railroad magnate's house, by the way. You know, it was the Gould's houses that we did the main house up in the movie. And then this was another, just was coincidental. The other house we did was a great rival of Gould's back in the 19th century. I forgot his name. But anyway, this house, word got around, and all the fans in Norwalk were there. So we had about, a couple of thousand out there at one point outside the house, you know, on the grounds. And some of them got in the side door and got it in all that mess and that around that floor, you know. There was a lot of weeds and the sticks and brush and everything all over the house. And there must have been 25 kids in that scene, and they couldn't get them out. And they were so up against time, you know. These budget movies, you know, they had no time to waste. And so they just said, "Okay, we know you're there. Just stay still, for God's sake." And we shot the scene. And I suppose if you look carefully at something, you may see a little nose sticking. But there were about 20 kids in that scene, hiding behind the bushes. We just didn't have time to clear them. They got in the house. But that was a chaotic day. And I was so exhausted. That scene was hard work, and it was just physical all day long. And I didn't like the way he finally did the scene with all that echo thing. He apologized to me in advance. "You're not going to like this, Jonathan, but we feel it's effective." You know, that echo thing, and you couldn't even hear what I'm saying. So anyway, but that's showbiz, movie showbiz. Okay, yeah.
I think everybody wants to know if next year have your next year go back.
Well, ask the boys then. I mean, it would be presumptuous of me to say he's certainly on coming back. Thank you. If. Okay. All right, so we've got to kind of wind up. If anybody has a desperate question, I repeat. Now, if you think of things, I would like to get some reaction from you in the mail. And if you have some thoughts about it, please drop me a line in care of that address through Ann Wilson at the it's called the Newark Festival. Dark Shadows Newark Festival. Dark Shadows Festival, Newark, New Jersey. Dark Shadows Festival. Anyway, the address will be out in and it would be interesting to get some reactions. And so I think maybe we better get on to the auction. Got to make some money. So thank you very much again. It was a most delightful.